Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Propagandacast with me, Imperial Dane, and today I have for you a 1 versus 1 on Sturzdorf. Yes, indeed, we will be going on another trip to the Sturzdorf, that small ruined industrial township. And we'll of course have to see what shall be waiting for our opponents, what shall they be doing, what shall be happening. Sturzdorf being, of course, rather difficult in some ways, rather interesting in other ways. The difficult ways being basically there's a lot of structures blocking line of fire, making it a lot easier for some troops to get actually closer to you, and of course you can also easily end up getting divided in some ways. And long-range anti-tank assets like PACs, anti-tank guns and mortars and all that can have a bit of problem again. All of these sort of buildings blocking everything, which makes faster vehicles a lot more maneuverable and a lot more survivable. Otherwise, points are sort of evenly distributed. Blah. Although the highest ones is in fact right here, farthest away from the two bases, more or less cut off by a strategic point. Some buildings here, though, they can't actually cover this strategic point. This one can with a machine gun, but then some other blind spots come into play. This here area tends to be the main point of contest, with this one sort of being part of it, but usually this tends to be it because, well, it's the shortest spot between the two bases. Anyhow, so let's go have a look at our opponent, shall we? In the southern corner we are seeing our friend Tommygaga with the Panzer Elite and Kettenkrad. 2nd Panzer Division trying to make its way back to the German lines, stuck in Belgium, surrounded, and now has to make a breakthrough. Who shall be managing this breakthrough? On the northern side we will be seeing Groulagaragran. That's certainly not something that quite rolls off the tongue, but here he is. 3rd Armored Division ready to show those crowds who's in charge. And let us get straight to it, eh? No mucking about. Kettenkrad moving out straight towards this area, it seems. Not sort of spreading out towards the flanks, but straight for the center. That's rather interesting. Panzer Grenadiers on the way, nothing unusual there. Or at least it shouldn't be. Otherwise I'd say something's off. Barracks going up, so again, nothing unusual there, nothing bad. At least weapon supports and start against the Panzer Elite can tend up going very badly very quickly. Then again, could so against the Wehrmacht as well if the opponent knows what he's doing. Opel blitzes in the background, completely useless except for cover, and getting blown up in a spectacular way. Engineers securing territory, Panzer Grenadiers leaking up territory, it seems as well. The Kettenkrad going straight towards here. This is a bit odd, I might add. I mean, this is sort of the most exposed territory which can easily be taken, so why he's going for it is a bit beyond me. That's just sort of my opinion. I might of course be wrong. Panzer Grenadiers then securing the rest right there in the center, although mind you, Panzer Grenadiers aren't the fastest in taking territory, and it's usually better to let your Panzer Grenadiers or something else, Kettenkrads, something else to take territory, not the Panzer Grenadiers. My goodness. Engineers moving in, perhaps going for the fuel point, at least hoping to render it neutral, but the Panzer Grenadiers spotted, opening up on the Engineers. Engineers of course can take cover behind this huge pile of logs. Panzer Grenadiers finish taking the victory point and then move in to give those Engineers a swift kick to the behind, and there we go. Engineers making a run for it. Panzer Grenadiers firing their Kar-98Ks. More Panzer Grenadiers beginning to seize territory, and the Kettenkrad just sort of continues along a straight line through the center of the map. Rather interesting. Not a usual capping order, at least not from what I see. Riflemen sort of in a small engagement, pulling away, not really wanting to take on these Panzer Grenadiers when there's a big huge open space, and the Panzer Grenadiers do sort of have this heavy cover in the form of that old truck. But Riflemen are instead switching the lane of attack. That's good. Instead of going for where there is resistance, usually the key is to go where there's absolutely nothing and sort of force your opponent to come there, take territory, and of course be a sneaky little git. So of course rather good show there. More Panzer Grenadiers, but still no building. This could usually indicate the sort of usual, hey, let's go for armored cars, which isn't really my favorite, since that's pretty much what everyone goes for, and in 50% of the cases it goes absolutely tits up. Or perhaps there's even more cases actually. Don't actually have a proper statistic. Engineers hunting down in the east, but now getting engaged by Panzer Grenadiers, but riflemen are moving in from the rear. This could end up in a nasty ambush, and these chaps are finally realizing what's going on, but without an infantry half-track to actually transport them easily from point A to point B, they're going to be in a spot of trouble. Riflemen moving in, engaging the Panzer Grenadiers pulling out. Not quite happy about things. And they really need to get out of there, so does the Kettenkraut. There we go. Panzer Grenadiers continuing their sweep from the west. Riflemen getting caught while trying to take a fuel point, but they manage to take it and take up positions in heavy cover. While the Panzer Elite troops don't quite have the same, although some are behind some old searchlight, and the others are taking up position in a house. Which certainly gave them a small advantage, but what is this? More riflemen moving in from the north. This is rather going to put this position under a lot of pressure, and they need support. We are seeing a Panzerjäger command going up. So pretty much business as usual from the Panzer Elite. Nothing highly exciting there at all. Nothing from the riflemen at all, and this could of course end up a bit unfortunately, because, well, there's probably going to be appearing some sort of armored car soon. Then again, a lot of Americans do like to go heavy on the riflemen. Before that, we'll of course have to see. Kettenkraut coming under fire, and of course all these territories are awfully close to the Panzer Elite base, of course not really taken. And now of course all the more forward territories are getting taken away, since there's nothing to defend them, which is rather going to be costing Tommygaga in the resource area a bit more heavily than usual.
Americans are seizing territory from
Riflemen
us.
pushing on here, coming under fire from some Panzer Grenadiers with their Gewehr 43s. One dead on the road. The rest sort of trying to take the point, and they do so successfully. Of course, Riflemen are being rather swift at taking territory. One of the swiftest capturing times, actually. Panzer Grenadiers getting ready for an assault from the west. More Riflemen moving in. Kettenkraut also moving in, not entirely sure what's on his mind, although probably it's that he wants to get the devil out of there since he's now under fire. Armored cars on the way. Nothing unusual there. Of course, they will be able to devastate the American riflemen with some skill and tenacity. Then again, they can also be cut down if they're not careful, since they do have some rather thin armor. Riflemen holding the line. Engineers ready with flamethrowers. There we go, first armored car is ready. And what do those sneaky Americans have underway? I don't know. Perhaps a BAR, perhaps grenades.
The enemy is attacking a petrol depot.
American continuing to push onwards from all sides, really tightening in the noose on Tommygaga and his 2nd Panzer Division, or at least what remains of it. And there we go, a huge charge across open ground. The riflemen are not really stopping up, nor are the engineers, and every one of Tommygaga's Panzer Grenadiers are bunched up. Flamethrowers moving in, scorching quite a few Panzer Grenadiers, forcing them out of cover, killing quite a few. Oh dear. Panzer Grenadier team cut down. Armored car charging in, hoping to sort of reverse the fates.
Attention, the enemy advances.
Opening up on these riflemen here in the west, unsupported, more moving in from all sides. Luftwaffe doctrine being chosen for the Panzer Elite. The Luftwaffe doctrine, usually the most chosen one actually, since it's also the most flexible, and that tends to be a rather nice thing. Armored car moving in from the north, doing its best to hold away the riflemen, but it's taking an awful lot of fire. And the riflemen are actually not taking an awful lot of hits from the autocannon fire. The armored car getting stuck up in an old warehouse. Another armored car though moves in to save the day, forcing all of the riflemen in a hasty retreat. Panzer Grenadiers instead going for the east. No Kettenkraut to actually take territory, so they will have to do it. More armored cars on the way. This is some rather heavy armored car spam, and sticky bombs going off on the armored car, and it does not get away swiftly enough. 2 sticky bombs go off, and the armored car is lost rather swiftly. Those have been some rather heavy losses away for Tommygaga and his forces. And of course that tends to be the fate of armored cars if they're sort of used in the, hey, let's try using this as the tank role, since of course they aren't tank, they're armored cars, and in this case not awfully armored cars. And they're more for flanking, sort of staying at range and bombarding and supporting, but not really to sort of drive up to the enemy and look mean. Damaged engine, though it looks like it might be tearing through those riflemen. No, one barely makes it out of there. And Panzer Grenadiers are securing territory in the east, though then again, they're not really in their element. They're better off fighting, and then you're better off getting a kit and crash, actually taking territory. Luftwaffe troops moving forwards, apparently mixing up with the 2nd Panzer Division on the retreat. Riflemen in larger numbers going to be hitting these spread out Panzer Grenadiers, which of course is another thing that's rather unfortunate with this sort of trying to use Panzer Grenadiers as territory capturers, since they are much weaker on their own, in particular when you're getting hit by such a large force of riflemen with BARs. The armored car doing its best, but of course it's taking quite a bit of fire, and the riflemen are in heavy cover. Another armored car dashes in. Riflemen taking quite a bit of fire, but the heavy cover does provide protection, and the armored car is already down to 50% health, while the riflemen have barely taken any damage. Not the most glorious of situations, and now some assault grenadiers are on the way. Luftwaffe troops taking territory, armored cars sort of hanging about in the middle of nowhere. They might be moving in to try and stop these riflemen once more. There we go, capturing them out on the open road. Catching them, I suppose. Gunning them down. Riflemen trying to get close to get a sticky bomb off, but at the same time they move straight into the open against the armored cars, and they take a terrible toll on the riflemen. And the North Luftwaffe troops are coming under fire from another combined force of 2 riflemen teams. Panzer Grenadiers moving in to try and hold it, but they're not going to be able to hold off against the riflemen since they're so close quarters. And the riflemen also able to gain cover. There we go, swiftly retreating. Panzer Grenadiers getting reinforced. Defensive operations on the way. Assault Grenadiers marching out. Armored cars moving towards the west. One is heavily damaged. And we are seeing a motor pool coming up. This is of course going to mean an armored car very soon. And Tommygaga has absolutely no anti-tank assets. That's what you call bad. Let us go switch over to Groulagaragran, whatever. Riflemen holding the line, no doctrine as of yet. Riflemen taking quite a bit of fire actually out there in the open. One of them reporting in fact that they are fucked up, which is probably a rather apt description of the situation. Riflemen moving towards the center. Assault Grenadiers also trying to take the central victory point to at least secure some victory points. But they are forced to stop their endeavor, take up positions behind the fence and open up on the riflemen with their assault rifles. Riflemen getting into the range of the assault rifles. How shall this end up? Apparently not well for the assault Grenadiers, who are in fact taking a lot more fire than they're able to deliver onto the riflemen. And they will have to retreat, though one rifleman does go down. The assault Grenadiers only manage that. Armored car now on the move. And of course now Tommygaga has to be aware that yes, there's an armored car and he is in a spot of trouble. But good news is they're going for the armored car when your opponent has invested so heavily in anti-infantry assets, so many armored cars, so many Panzer Grenadiers, so many everything else. Going for an armored car then tends to be a good choice. Of course, at the same time though, I can't help but notice there's a severe lack of mines to actually sort of secure the territory he's taken, and of course make it a lot harder for Tommygaga to actually... Oh wait, there we go. But still, that's only one mine. He needs a lot more mines. And by a lot more mines, I mean a lot. And Tommygaga needs some anti-tank assets rather swiftly before things go pear-shaped. Even further, that is, he's barely got any territory now. Holding on ever desperately, and he loses another Kettenkraut. That was tragic. There we go, Panzer Support Command going up. That of course is going to mean the anti-tank half-track. M8 moving in. And coming under fire from the flak feeling, taking a minimum a bit of damage. Luftwaffe troops not entirely sure what they're supposed to be doing. Panzer grenadiers out in the open, getting gunned down. And the armored car managed to kill the gunner on the M8 with its auto cannon, but that's about it. Another hit, and now the armored car is down to half health. Not looking good. Riflemen coming out a bit of fire. Panzer grenadiers breaking through in the west while the armored cars are keeping the M8 occupied. Riflemen forced into a severe retreat. Lots of assault rifles for everyone. Riflemen taking quite a bit of damage, hoping to perhaps cut down an entire team. And oh dear, almost. Luftwaffe troops taking up position in the Peglevsky factory. Armored car sneaking in through the base a few times, getting a few rear shots from the flak failing. Panzer grenadiers charging in on the riflemen, trying to take a point. Oh dear, the riflemen are getting cut down. And what is this? Apparently it set off a mine, and apparently it somehow was laid down itself. I just missed that. What is this? Armored cars are moving in, and they could be getting the kill. Yes, indeed. No need for the anti-tank half-track, actually. That was a bit unfortunate. Of course, you have to be careful with your own mines, and of course, laying them down, that can sort of backfire on you.
We are losing the sector.
Now the Panzer Grenadiers are pushing out after having managed a small victory, and apparently Groulagaragran took the advantage of the situation that the Panzer Elite was completely stuffed up in his own base and went for a tank depot to sort of cement it even further. Of course, now the question is, what will he be going for? If he goes for something like the Sherman, he's probably going to be able to get a good advantage, crush the Panzer Grenadiers and their armoured support, which of course is awfully armoured. A tank destroyer, if he goes for that, can sort of do it, but at the same time, he won't be able to actually deal with those Panzer Grenadiers in a competent manner. And then again, knowing a lot of American commanders, though, he's probably going to be going for the M10, at least if we're going to assume this is not really a high surprise game, seen as, well, Tommygaga has already gone heavily for the armoured cars. Anti-tank half-track on the way now, realizing he needs one. There's probably going to be more. Of course, he's not aware of what that more is. Panzer Grenadiers doing the best to take territory. Riflemen and engineers charging in. A large force, armoured cars blazing away. Assault rifles joining in, but getting out of there. These chaps in the west need to get out of there as well. Anti-tank half-track moving in as well. Focused fire, perhaps. That would be good. Very good. Yes, indeed. And, of course, it does have a very little amount of splash damage, so if troops are too clumped up, it can actually kill a few of them more at once. 5 killed so far. Sticky bomb going off. Oh dear, that was a bit unfortunate. Riflemen though out in the open, getting torn to bits by autocannon fire. Anti-tank half-track turning out. Luftwaffe troops are nearby to repair, and they immediately begin doing so. There's just good coordination. Nothing from the tank depot, and instead of going for the Sherman, which he could have afforded, he goes for the tank destroyer. That tank destroyer might destroy his dreams and plans of a victory. For all I know. Kettenkrab moving out.
They're going after one of our munitions points.
We held the point.
Engineers taking the point there, denying Tommygaga an awful lot of fuel. And one goes down to armoured car fire right there. Face down in the dirt, left behind by his friends. Devastation. Riflemen getting ready for another counter-attack, perhaps waiting for the... not waiting for the M10 actually. I've got a cold, hooray. And there we go, M10 tank destroyer joining in the field. And catching some Panzer Grenadiers out in the open. And a hiccup. Wirbelwind also arriving onto the field. Interesting choice. And I do believe it's time for the mid-game analysis. What is the current situation? Well, currently, the American commander certainly does hold the advantage in sort of technology. He has access to the tank depot, but he hasn't really gone for the tanks. He's sort of gone for the tank destroyers. Question is, he's sort of figuring that again, if it has the name tank in its name, then it must be able to act like a tank, in which case, no. That's wrong. Although then again, it was actually a good move to sort of go for that advantage, and he's certainly going to be using it quite heavily. And of course, the only thing that Tommygaga can currently do to sort of protect him against it is basically knock out the tanks off the tank destroyer and sort of hope he can keep it away until he gets something that can actually deal with it. Otherwise, good movements from the American commander, really keeping the aggression up, and also penning in the German commander in his base, though at the same time he was a bit bold against the base, and he sort of forgot to lay down an awful lot of mines, and now the Germans are pressing onwards with a vengeance. Wirbelwind ready to stop any infantry. We'll of course have to see how that goes, although nice jet black color. Very sinister looking. But really lacking in anti-tank assets, and that's really what Groulagaragran is going to take advantage of, which is, well, what you usually do. And we are seeing a supply and upgrade. All he'd need to really get the Imperial Dane stamp of approval is a medic station. So let us return to the fight. M10 charging in, opening up on the armored car. Although you probably should be focusing on the anti-tank half-track. There we go. Immobilized though. And anti-tank half-track doing its best to get out of there. Panzer grenades and Luftwaffe troops opening up on the M10. Riflemen moving into support, but they're not going to have much luck. Anti-tank half-track knocked out, armored cars getting out of there. Luftwaffe troops rather realizing they're in a nasty spot of trouble, and the M10 can occasionally kill infantry. Though again, I wouldn't use that as my primary purpose. Panzer grenades scattering to all winds, and riflemen coming under fire from the Wirbelwind, although it seems to have hit a mine. That was a bit unfortunate there, but then again, good placing of a mine actually. Flak feeling mount opening up on the riflemen, cutting them down. 2 kills so far, that's not an awful lot, but still better than nothing. Riflemen pushing onwards in the center. M10 left behind, and airborne doctrine being chosen, so it's again going to be sort of a... Wow. I actually catch that one. I mean, I've been watching the replay several times, and I've sort of missed where that happened. And apparently somehow all of the... Let's just briefly explain what happened here. Besides, apparently now there's someone stuck on the roof of the tank depot. And the tank destroyer didn't even get out. Yes, that's a bit of schadenfreude, but who cares? Although probably I'm guessing the American commander is a bit pissed. What is the situation? Well, what happened? Well, of course, well, the Panzer Elite has a rather lot of anti-tank, anti-air assets. I mean, he has the Wirbelwind, he has the armored cars, and he has the base flak Fearlings. And apparently it's this one which scored the kills somehow. And sometimes they actually don't have time to hit, but other times somehow they can actually hit. And apparently this sort of concerto of anti-aircraft fire from the entire combined Panzer Elite arsenal somehow managed to knock out this aircraft just as it was entering the base, knocking it down right into the M10, blowing it all to bits. And also heavily damaging the tank depot. This is certainly a bit of a rarity, but certainly it's a fun one, and this is what really makes Company of Heroes alive. Makes it dynamic, makes it fun, and of course makes you glad that anti-air assets actually work, although again it's sort of occasionally. Still, kaboom! And now there's a big nice bonfire inside the tank depot. Aha.
Sector.
Ah, yes. Armored cars moving in. Opening up on the riflemen. Panzer grenades in a rather nasty spot.
Losing ground out there.
Need to get out there before they're gunned down. There we go. Riflemen getting gunned down, but I don't think the Panzer grenades might be getting out of there. Or will they? Apparently they will. Panzer grenades are killing the east. No one actually repairing the Wirbelwind. That's a bit unfortunate. M10. Yes, engineers are moving in to save the rather stricken M10. Left for dead behind enemy lines. The tank depot still looking rather shabby, and apparently a fresh tank destroyer is on the way to replace the one lost. Panzer strike troops moving in, taking up cover here, hoping to do their best. Another shot, and that might be the end. There we go. Tank destroyer number 2 is lost.
Forward supply lines are broken.
Panzer grenadiers and armored cars moving in.
We're losing a strategic sector.
No repairs on the tank depot though. A sneaky raid could in fact knock it out. That's something to be wary of, although looks like Tommygaga isn't really sort of into that sort of thing. Though he is into lots of kitten crowds. Rifling out in the open, taking shots from the tank buster team, although the Panzer X are missing. Another tank destroyer is ready. Engineers getting reinforced.
You're losing a munitions sector.
Tank destroyer moving in towards the center of everything. That seems a bit careless. And again, there's not going to be an awful lot to stop it, except perhaps one Panzer team, which is nowhere to be seen. Panzer grenades need to get out of there. Other chaps are getting gunned down. Suppressive fire from both sides. Oh dear, pinned, retreating. Let us switch back to Tommygaga. And for some reason, I have a feeling that we'll be seeing more airplanes crashing sometime soon. Tank buster team doing their best, but they are out in the open, which does mean there might be a small problem.
The enemy is seizing our territory.
Tank destroyer moving in, coming under quite a bit of fire. Riflemen getting gunned down in the open. And apparently another plane went crashing down, in this case right down here. Just briefly check, was it an air? It's strafing. Yes, indeed, it was a strafing run, which didn't quite strafe anything. Instead, crashed down right here into the remains of the truck. Certainly a lot of anti-air assets, and for some reason not a awful lot for Groulagaragran. With it, tank busters knocking it out. What managed to kill, I don't know. In this case, though, it was apparently the flak feeling. Hooray! Though it has taken quite a bit of damage, it is still there, and apparently it somehow managed an aerial kill, which is good for it. Riflemen getting gunned down in the middle of everything, pinned down. Will they survive? Nope. I'm sure there's going to be a medal for that Viablevin crew. Saving some Panzer grenadiers from a strafing run. So fucking ridiculous. Clearly someone isn't quite keen on the whole anti-air assets. And perhaps not having gotten the idea that after one plane crashing down, he perhaps shouldn't be calling down another one. Still, I wouldn't say it's ridiculous. I'd only say it's good sense and fun to see planes going crashing down. In particular sense, well, they're so fond of them, so it's actually good to have something to stop them. And he has indeed just blown up in the air, although the sort of way he's saying it sort of means, at least I got the impression when I read that, wait, did they crash mid-air? Apparently not. And yes, indeed, it destroyed the M10. That's still quite remarkable.
Butterfly bombs are now available to use against the enemy.
Another M10 being called in, and rather now his sort of strategy is falling apart because he's only relying on M10s. He isn't really relying anything that can actually deal with those Panzer grenades in a sensible manner. Wait, did another plane crash? Yes, indeed. Apparently into the forest. Goodness gracious, that's 3 planes going down.
What's the good news?
Apparently the key seems to be to having 2 flak feelings, a Wirbelwind and 2 armored cars. Then you're safe from all threats from above. Always good to know. But there's clearly a no-fly zone right here. No, wait! A plane actually manages it. It apparently goes in from the side, which isn't so heavily dense in anti-air assets. That was a bit unfortunate, though. Still, it was fun to see pretty much 3 planes going down. Anti-tank half-track moving in, not entirely sure what he's hoping. Or perhaps immobilizing, there we go. Tracks flying off. Hitting the rear. Needs to get out of there before it gets hit in return. But no heavy anti-tank assets from the Panzer Elite. And Wirbelwind, oh dear, Wirbelwind is going to get knocked out. That was unfortunate. It's only going to be limiting the anti-aircraft zone. Panzer flying at the
The
M10.
Yankees are grabbing our territory.
M10 though surviving the hit. And some Panzer Grenadiers just shrieking. Apparently they can't handle the stress. Shouting about goddamn cowboys. Which is certainly a sentiment I can agree with at times. Tank busters charging ahead and strafed. Oh dear. Without the vehicle wind, those damn Yankee planes will be flying without
The enemy
stop.
is seizing our territory.
Armored cars charge gunning away at these riflemen. Or apparently perhaps was the armored cars not being in the west anymore. Apparently you actually need a quite heavy anti-aircraft field to actually be knocking down any planes. Then again, considering the sort of investment, it's not a bad thing, I suppose. Although at the same time it does sort of... Alright, let's just briefly pause here. Butterfly bombs, what are they? They aren't actually bombs, they're sort of more like mines. What does this mean? Well, it means you probably shouldn't be dropping them right in front of the enemy. You probably should be waiting till after he's left. Then he's sort of like, well, there's nothing here, and then boom. Instead, of course, you can actually knock out some of those mines. Although the M10 might take a bit of damage. No, it didn't. And there we go. Marder 3, Tank Destroyer, Tank Hunter. Based on the Panzer 38T. Czechoslovakian tank was very mechanically reliable. And was pretty much used from the start to beginning, at least in some ways. Although after 1942, it was it 1941? It was actually used just for conversions, like the Marder 3. There was also the Gepard Flak Panzer. There was the Hetzer, and there was the Grille, which was sort of a self-propelled artillery piece, using the schwere Infanteriegeschütz. And there were probably some other bits as well. Plus there were some conversions made on the heads as well, one for flamethrowers and another actually stuffing a, well, schwere Infanteriegeschütz, making a sort of stew version of the Hetzer. Tank Destroyer and the Tank Hunter moving in. And might be opening up on those tank destroyers. Oh dear, it's taking fire, it moved in too far, oh dear. Having to get out of there. Quickly. Mynheer. You do not want those damn cowboys to hit you. And the rifleman hitting the butterfly mines, this was good. A generally good spot is, of course, you just drop them right here in a nice spot, of course, where you expect the enemy to be passing through a lot. And butterfly mines can actually be quite effective, and they can certainly knock out an armored car if it's unwary. And it looks like we'll be seeing a Panther battle group being called in. Most interesting. Sadly, no more vehicle vents to sort of be providing more aerial takedowns. That was actually quite fun to watch. It's actually a bit rare you see this many aircraft getting knocked out, and certainly very rare that they do something like this. But enough about my enjoyment about seeing Allied aircraft going down. Let's return to the fight. All quiet for the moment. Lots of tank destroyers though, 3, and still not a single Sherman in sight. Apparently the 3rd Armored Division has run short on Shermans and instead have to rely on tank destroyers to do the job. And certainly the 3rd Armored Division suffered heavy losses in their tanks. Somewhere around 300%. And considering those divisions had a lot of Sherman tanks, that's a lot of Shermans. Riflemen trying to take the central western victory point, getting fired upon by armored cars, suffering quite heavily. Tank destroyers though are moving in. The Marder has to move in, and no, it's apparently occupied with something silly in the west, some infantry. This is a bit unfortunate. Armored cars trying their best to get out of there. The horde of tank destroyers moving in, the Wolverining.
Attention, the enemy advances.
And apparently the light anti-tank half-track is still there, could be perhaps knocking out the treads of a tank destroyer. And looks like the Panther's almost ready. And there we go, opening up. The Marder not really there to help though. Destroyed engine on one M10. There we go, Marder moving in. Could it be locking down? Panzer troops also moving in. First Marder might be going down. Knock it down, there we go. M10 knocked out, strafing run, taking out the Busters. It looks like another M10 might be going down. There we go. But 2 M10s are moving in on the Marder. Oh dear. And those Panzer Grenadiers need to get out or they will be squished. There we go. And the M10, or the Marder, having knocked out 2 M10s. It's not getting good knocked out itself. That was a bit unfortunate. Still a good show for his money. Armored cars hiding in the edge of the base. And there we go. The remains of what the 2nd Panzer Division can call in to Belgium in Panthers has arrived. Nice big Panthers. Going through all those wreckage of M10s. And opening up on the riflemen. Apparently somehow managing to suppress them. That's a bit rare. Or could it be perhaps that they hit a butterfly mine and actually went down? Yes indeed. That was probably more it. Riflemen in the north, oh dear, and the Panthers are moving in without support. That's usually not what you want to see. Still, probably not a bad idea that he went for the Panthers when there's so many M10s. And apparently he got lucky and the sticky bomb didn't actually damage the engine. That's actually quite fortunate. Riflemen pushing hard in the east. Apparently also getting mortar teams now, actually using his supply drops. That's actually a bit rare. You actually see people doing that. That's not a bad idea at all. Riflemen out in the open against the Panthers. Panthers opening up, not hitting anything. But there we go. Sticky bomb going off on the rear of the Panther. Oh dear. And then damaged engine this time around. Panzer Grenadiers and Luftwaffe troops moving in towards the center. Tank busters also moving in. More tank busters. Armored cars joining in the fun as well. Panthers guarding the northern approach. They're sort of forgetting the enemy is in the east. And what is this? More butterfly mines. This is actually good usage, but again right in front of the enemy. Not so good. M10 guarding the east, but will it be able to do so properly? And let us return to Mr. Groulagaragran. Again, not something that quite easily rolls off the tongue. And this is sort of a bug where the smoke sort of actually keeps being there despite the butterfly bomb. Of course, if you see some sort of red smoke and you're the American, yeah, you're probably looking at butterfly mines. Just a sort of good hint. Panzer grenades out in the open, taking quite a bit of fire. And the Panthers are now moving in. This could be a very nasty situation for the M10s, but a nice situation for Tommygaga and his 2nd Panzer Division remnants. Trying to make its way out of Western Europe, back towards the fatherland for refitting. Opening up on the riflemen, but more riflemen moving in from the... Well, that's the Luftwaffe troops. That was a bit fortunate. Interesting enough, we haven't seen any airborne infantry with recoilless rifles, and apparently a bombing run is being made ready. Hey, machine gun taking up position there. That's actually going to be securing the east rather nicely. Panther still holding line, so the armored cars. The American commander has been forced back into his base.
Losing ground out there.
And apparently a Panzer Grenadier went up into the air as it was hit by the veteran T2 M10 tank destroyer. That's actually quite a nasty one. Increased penetration and increased speed. Nasty bugger. Panthers sticking together like Panthers should. And going after that M10. And an anti-tank gun is ready, and oh dear, that Panther's forgetting all about it. They managed to get out there. M10 won't be making out of there, I fear. Anti-tank gun opens up. Oh dear, this Panther's down to half health. Might want to get out of there. M10 moving in. Not an awful left, actually. And might be ending up in a sort of trap. Or is it for Tommygaga that is ending up in it? Knows. Panthers taking quite a bit of fire. One getting sticky bombed. Panzer grenades moving in from the south, cutting down the riflemen. M10 down. M10 down. Panthers are still there though, and another M10 might be going down soon, which could be a very dire situation for Mr. Groulagaragran. And there we go, lost, and the anti-tank gun as well, which is going to leave him most vulnerable to the Panthers.
Casualties being reported.
And a bombing run which hits nothing. Bit too late, and there we go. Groulagaragran, rather than realizing the fight is over, and the 2nd Panzer Division breaks out from the encirclement. Hooray! So there you go. Well, what can we learn from this? Well, again, there's this sort of rather trying to rely heavily on one unit to sort of win everything for you mentality, which doesn't really quite work out. I mean, first it was for Tommygaga, he suffered rather heavily, got pushed into his base actually, and then Groulagaragran ended up doing the exact same thing. He went heavily on the M10s, but he never bothered getting a shim which could actually have dealt with the infantry in a more proper manner, and that was probably which bit him in the ass in the long run. He lost a lot, and of course there was sort of the aircraft constantly getting called in, and of course a rather nice combination of anti-aircraft fire actually taking it down, which was, well, probably not intended, but it does point out that you actually need quite a bit to actually stop the allied aircraft, but still quite effective, and a man apparently also managed to knock out an M10, so hurrah for that. Always again, don't try just to stick to one unit in huge numbers. It's rarely going to actually help you in the long run. As we saw here, it was rather combined efforts, combined arms, which won the day, rather than just one unit. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this fight. If you did want to subscribe, or tell your friends, and if you didn't, well, why not send in a replay of your own? This is Imperial Dane saying, watch the skies. Cheers.